Hi folks, Dr. Hopewell and Dr. Lynn here, ready to do a how-to video for Checkpoint 4. And this will help you a lot as you work on the Google form that we've asked you to fill out as part of that module. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lynn to get us started.
Okay, the piece that we want to talk about most of all during the video is a new piece that we added to this assignment. And the purpose was to really help you as students and as teachers really develop your skills on honing in on what were the main findings of your study. And so it's not only for the purpose of completing this assignment, it helps you in this process, should help you in writing your abstract and also help you in writing the end of the year report. But maybe even more importantly, we want you to get really, really comfortable with what did I learn in my study. So if you're walking down the hall and the principal says, hey, by the way, what did you learn when you implemented that study? What were your findings? You can say really succinctly and really, but very specifically, these were the main things that I learned. So that's what we're going to try to help you practice on by filling out the Google form that is provided as a link in the with this assignment.
Okay, so we're going to use a template or an example that you have in your for more information section in our class, and it looks like this.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to call attention to is just some of the fields that are on this report. You can see, the first three columns really are pretty self-explanatory. Under research focus, that's really inviting you to state in not a real specific way, but clearly, what is your focus of your study? So this should come directly from your purpose statement. So that should look familiar to you or to me when I'm looking at it. I could say that was the purpose of their study. The next column is indicating the number of participants and then the length of the study. And one of the things we want to keep in mind as we're reporting our findings is all of you conducted a relatively short study, 3 weeks, in some cases 6 weeks. And so Dr. Hopewell will talk later about keeping in context the findings. So let me talk really quickly about the qualitative student learning outcomes. One of the things that you're going to want to do is not just look at your data and how the analysis went, but basically you're wanting to link this to your questions. So think of your questions that were qualitative. And so a good qualitative example usually says something like, what were the students' perceptions of? And so you can see some examples here for this first example that we're showing you for the 7th grade class. It says that they were collected by a participant survey, and the overall conclusion that this teacher drew was that the findings indicated more interest in math class. And then she gives 4 specific examples, and you can see in quotes things that she documented that her students actually said that indicated, in her mind anyway, more interest in math. So good documentation of specifics that students have stated.
So we'll move over here to the quantitative side, and you'll notice that this person, when they reported the quantitative outcomes, again, they tied it to describing what happened numerically in the study. Okay, so we have participants demonstrated improved math scores with an average increase of 11%. Now, as Dr. Lynn alluded to earlier, a couple of things we need to keep in mind for the context of reporting particularly quantitative results. Your studies are very short, and so typically when you conduct a scientific study where you're trying to demonstrate causality, so that means that the intervention that you used caused something. When you're trying to demonstrate that, you need to do a much longer study, and you don't do an action research study to so-called prove or demonstrate that. So when you describe these things, you can still describe, students' scores increasing, or as an example down here, Number three, an average of 85% of assignments and assessments were turned in prior to the intervention as compared to 90% during the intervention. So really this person is using numbers um, or statistics to describe what happened during the study. She's not necessarily saying that the intervention caused this, and we would say that it would be more correlated with what was happening. So if the intervention happened and correlated with that was an increase in student participation. Now, we might know or we might suspect in our own classroom that that was caused by the intervention, but we don't report it that way because that's a different kind of study. So you're not saying, this person is not saying that for all seventh grade students everywhere in the United States, that this person should use problem-based learning and expect this kind of numerical result. Basically what she's saying is that in this seventh grade class, for her students during this 3-week period, this is what happened. And if we go back to the original intent of teaching you and coaching you through an action research study, you'll remember that we wanted to help you become familiar with formally examining the effects of what you do with your teaching. So you don't just willy-nilly run around, trying this intervention and trying this and changing that, but that you're paying attention in a disciplined way to what happens so that you're noticing specific things before you even implement that teaching change. You know what to look for.
Okay, so I want to just highlight a couple of things and link it to your textbook. The example that this student's reporting of their quantitative outcomes is a really good example of using descriptive statistics. So that's where you want to look in your textbook, review that again. Descriptive statistics are very commonly percent, mean, what was the mean or the average, what was a range? Range is also sometimes a relevant descriptive statistic to use. So that's a good example. I'm going to have Dr. Hopewell now scroll up to page 1 of this example, which by the way is posted in the assignment gallery, so you can look at it in more detail. And on the second example for the 5th grade class, let's look again at the quantitative pieces. For quantitative, you can see the first one, she says that there was a range of 38 to 62% improvement among the 3 participants that she had in her study. The second one says that one of our findings was that there was improved understanding of literal and inferential aspects of expository text. If you think about that a little bit, your question should be, to what extent? I'm not seeing a measurable statement here. So she should have said a percentage or a range or a mean or something that describes and makes it measurable in order for it to be a quantitative finding.
So in the example that Dr. Lynn used earlier, when your principal stops you in the hallway and says, oh, by the way, how did your study go? If you say, oh, it improved the understanding of literal and inferential aspects of expository text, they're going to kind of look at you and say, okay, how much? I mean, it's a little it's not specific enough or accurate enough to just say that it just improved it. And the inference there is just trust me, it improved. No, you want to use the information that you collected to really put a foundation down and prove that what happened in your study, the implications of what happened in your study tied to your conclusions.
Okay, great. A couple of things on your outcomes. One of the things that you're going to want to be thinking about is in a collaborative study. Obviously, for this Google Doc, you're not reporting all of your findings. So together you need to decide what were the most important findings, the primary findings that we got through our study, and report this in the Google Doc. You'll be able to do Google Forms, sorry. You'll be able to do far more detail in your action research report. So this will help you in writing those primary findings in your abstract. It'll help you learn how to be more definitive and specific and tie those findings to your research questions when you write your action research report in the end of the semester.
That's something that we want to kind of finish with, is just to make sure that you remember that when you report those outcomes, that you really tie them closely to your research focus and ultimately your questions, because you might have found a bunch of interesting things during your study, but you really want to keep yourself on track. Let that research focus kind of be your guiding guide rails, so to speak, on the road, to keep you from going too far off down another path. There will be a section for implications for future research or something like that in your report, in your paper, where you can talk about, we saw this and we thought about that, and we would like to investigate this further. But that's only for that section. You want to keep your findings and your outcomes focused.
Okay, and the last thing that we promised for this assignment is once we get all of your reports for in the Google form, one of the things we'll do is share it with you. So you get to see not only what you learned in your study, but what your peers in the ED 750 course learned through their studies. So thanks for your hard work. Hopefully this was helpful to you and be clear, concise, and succinct. Succinct is what we're working on. Thank you.